The third temple is closer to being built today than at any other point in human history. Not because of politics, not because of war, because of 5 animals standing in a field in Israel right now. What happens to those animals in the coming months could trigger a chain of events that was written about thousands of years ago. This is not speculation. This is happening. And to understand why this matters, we need to go back. Way back. Not to last year. Not to 1948. Yet we need to go back thousands of years to a command that God gave to Moses in the wilderness. A command so specific, so unusual, that most people have never heard of it. But the Jewish priests know it. They have been waiting for it. And now, for the first time in over 2,000 years, it may finally be fulfilled. In the book of Numbers, chapter 19, God gave Israel a very specific instruction. Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. Numbers 19:2. A red heifer, completely red, no blemishes, never worked a day in its life. This animal was to be sacrificed outside the camp. Its ashes were then mixed with water, and that water was used for one purpose only: purification. But not just any purification. This was the purification required for priests who had come into contact with death. Without it, they could not serve in the temple. Without it, the temple itself could not function. And without it, according to Jewish law, the third temple cannot be built. That is why this animal matters so much. Now here is where it gets interesting. In all of Jewish history, only 9 red heifers have ever been found that met the biblical requirements. 9. In thousands of years. The last one was used during the time of the Second Temple, before it was destroyed in 70 AD. Since then, not one has been found. Not one has qualified. Until now. In September 2022, 5 young red heifers were carefully selected from a ranch in Texas. They were examined by rabbinical experts. They were checked for blemishes. They were verified as never having been yoked or used for any kind of work. And then they were flown to Israel. 5 animals, thousands of years of waiting, and they are standing in Israel right now. But here is the part that most people don't know. The red heifer cannot be sacrificed at just any age. According to Jewish law, the animal must be at least 3 years old before the ceremony can take place. These heifers arrived in Israel in 2022. That means right now, in 2025, they are approaching that exact age. The window is opening, and the priests are ready. Trained descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, have been quietly preparing for this moment. They have studied the ancient rituals. They know the exact process. They know where to stand, what to say, and how to perform a ceremony that has not been done in over 2 millennia. And they are not waiting for permission from the media. They are not waiting for a political green light. They are waiting for one thing only: a heifer that passes its final inspection. If even one of these 5 animals is declared acceptable by the examining rabbis, the purification ceremony can begin. And once that happens, everything changes. Because the purification of the priests is not the end of the story. Yet it is only the beginning. What comes after that purification is something that billions of people around the world have been reading about, praying about, and waiting for across generations. But before we get there is something about this red heifer that most people completely misunderstand. Something that even many Christians have never been taught. And it has everything to do with why this moment is bigger than just one religion, one nation, or one temple. Oh, we are going to get to that. But first, you need to understand what is actually being built right now in Jerusalem. Because the temple itself, it is more ready than you think. Most people assume that rebuilding the third temple would take decades, that it would require years of planning, gathering materials, training workers, and designing everything from scratch. But here is what is shocking. Almost everything is already done. In Jerusalem, there is an organization called the Temple Institute. They have been working quietly for over 30 years, and in that time they have done something that most of the world has completely ignored. They have prepared everything needed to begin temple worship. Right now, today, the priestly garments are sewn and ready. The golden vessels are crafted and waiting. The musical instruments are built. The menorah, a massive golden lampstand that stands in the temple, has already been constructed. It is on display in Jerusalem right now, within sight of the Temple Mount itself, and the table of showbread, the altar, the tools for sacrifice, all of it, ready. This is not a hobby project. This is not a symbolic gesture. The Temple Institute operates with one goal: to be ready the moment the temple can be rebuilt. Every item they create meets the exact biblical and rabbinical requirements for temple service. Every detail has been studied, debated, checked, and verified by leading scholars of Jewish law. They are not preparing for a museum. They are preparing for a functioning temple, and they have gone even further than most people realize. Blueprints for the third temple have been drawn. Architectural plans exist. The measurements described in the book of Ezekiel have been studied carefully and incorporated into the design. There is a full model of what the temple will look like. It is not a dream. It is a plan waiting to be executed. Now here is where the story gets even deeper. The prophet Ezekiel saw something extraordinary. In a vision, God transported him to the land of Israel and showed him a structure, a future temple, described in such specific detail that entire books have been written trying to fully understand it. In visions of God, he brought me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain, on which was a structure like a city to the south. Ezekiel 42. Ezekiel then spent chapters describing gates, courts, chambers, measurements, and priestly duties, all of it pointing to a temple that had not yet been built when he wrote those words. Many scholars believe what Ezekiel saw was the third temple, the one that is yet to come. And the Temple Institute believes they are building it. But there is a problem, and it is a significant one. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the exact location where both previous temples stood, is currently home to one of the most recognized structures in the world, the Dome of the Rock, a site considered sacred by over 1 billion people globally. This is the tension that sits at the center of everything. How can a temple be built on a site that is already occupied? How can ancient biblical prophecy be fulfilled without triggering a global conflict? These are questions that scholars, theologians, and political analysts have wrestled with for decades, and nobody has a clean answer. But here is what is interesting. Some Jewish scholars believe the temple does not need to stand on the exact spot currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock. Some believe there is a specific location on the Temple Mount where the temple can be built without disturbing the existing structure. Others believe the prophetic events surrounding the temple's construction will unfold in ways that no one can currently predict or plan for. What everyone agrees on is this: the preparations are real, the intent is real, and the momentum is building. Because while the world has been focused on wars, elections, and economic uncertainty, something has been quietly accelerating in Jerusalem. Something that connects directly to words written thousands of years ago by men who had no way of knowing what the world would look like today. And there is one more piece of this story that almost nobody is talking about: a connection between the red heifer, the third temple, and a prophecy in the New Testament that should make every Christian stop and pay very close attention. That connection is coming, and it may be the most important part of this entire story. Most Christians know the story of Jesus, the cross, the resurrection, the promise of his return. But there is a chapter of the Bible that connects all of that directly to what is happening in Israel right now, and most people have never been taught it. It is found in the book of Hebrews, chapter 9, and it changes everything about how you see the red heifer. The writer of Hebrews was speaking to Jewish believers who understood the old sacrificial system. They knew about the temple. They knew about the priests. They knew about the red heifer and what it meant. And the writer used all of that knowledge to point them toward something greater. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Hebrews 9:13-14. Read that slowly. The ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, purifying the flesh. The writer is talking about the red heifer ceremony, the same one described in Numbers 19, the same one that the priests in Israel are preparing to perform right now. And he is saying that as powerful as that ceremony was, Jesus did something infinitely greater. Here is the connection that most people miss. And the red heifer was sacrificed outside the camp, not inside the tabernacle, not at the altar, outside. Jesus was crucified outside the city walls of Jerusalem, not inside the temple, not at the altar, outside. The red heifer was without blemish, perfect, undefiled. Jesus was without sin, perfect, undefiled. The ashes of the red heifer were used to purify those who were unclean. The blood of Jesus was shed to purify those who were spiritually dead. This is not coincidence. This is a pattern woven into Scripture intentionally. The red heifer was never just about a ceremony. It was always pointing forward to the perfect sacrifice that was coming. But here is where it gets complicated in a way that most people have never considered. If the red heifer pointed to Jesus, then why does it matter that one is being prepared in Israel right now? If Jesus already fulfilled the deeper meaning of the ceremony, why would God allow a genuine red heifer to appear at this moment in history? That is the question that theologians are wrestling with right now. And the answer may be found in the words of Jesus himself. In Matthew chapter 24, the disciples came to Jesus and asked him directly, "What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus gave them a detailed answer, and in the middle of that answer he said something very specific. "When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoever reads, let him understand." Matthew 24:15. The holy place. A place that must exist for this prophecy to be fulfilled. A place where something called the abomination of desolation will one day stand. For that to happen, there must be a temple. There must be a holy place. There must be a functioning system of worship that can be desecrated. And that means the third temple must be built before the return of Jesus Christ. This is why Christians should be watching what is happening in Israel just as closely as Jewish believers are. Because the rebuilding of the temple is not just a Jewish event, it is a marker on the prophetic timeline that affects every person on earth. The Apostle Paul wrote about it too. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he described a future figure who would enter the temple and declare himself to be God. For that to happen, the temple must exist. The priests must be functioning. The system must be in place. And right now, piece by piece, that system is being assembled. The red heifer is not the end of the story. It is not even the middle. It is the key that unlocks the door to everything that comes next. And what comes next is something that has been debated, studied, and anticipated for centuries. Something that connects ancient prophecy to modern headlines in a way that is impossible to ignore. But there is one final piece of this story that we have not talked about yet. Something happening right now in 2025 that goes beyond the heifers, beyond the temple preparations, beyond the priestly training. Something that suggests the timeline may be moving faster than anyone expected. And that is where we are going next. Right now, as you are watching this, those 5 red heifers in Israel are being examined. Not casually, not symbolically. They are being examined by trained rabbinical experts who know exactly what to look for. Every hair is being checked. Every movement is being watched. Every detail matters. Because if even 2 hairs turn white, the heifer is disqualified. If the animal develops a blemish, it cannot be used. If someone accidentally places any burden on the heifer, even for a moment, it becomes invalid according to biblical law. The window for qualification is narrow, and it is closing. Here is what most people do not realize about the timing. According to Jewish law, a red heifer can be sacrificed between the ages of 3 and 4 years old. After 4 years, the animal is considered too old. The 5 heifers brought to Israel in September 2022 are now approaching 3 years old. That means the clock is ticking, not in years, in months. If one of these heifers is going to be used, it will happen soon, very soon. Cho and the preparations suggest they are not planning to wait. In recent months, something has shifted in Jerusalem. The tone has changed. The conversations have intensified. Religious leaders, who have been cautious for decades, are now speaking openly about the temple. Politicians who avoided the topic are beginning to acknowledge it. Young Israelis, who grew up secular, are suddenly interested in their ancient heritage. This is not happening in isolation, and it is happening alongside other events that seem unconnected but may actually be part of a larger pattern. The Abraham Accords normalized relations between Israel and nations that had been enemies for generations. For the first time in history, Israeli citizens can fly directly to Dubai, to Bahrain, to Morocco. Trade is flowing. Partnerships are forming. And with those partnerships comes a subtle but important shift. The idea of a rebuilt temple is becoming less controversial internationally. While the nations that would have opposed it violently are now economic partners with Israel. Is this coincidence? Or is this the political environment necessary for the temple to be rebuilt? There is something else happening that the mainstream media is not reporting. Thousands of priests from the tribe of Levi have been identified through genetic testing. DNA analysis has confirmed their ancestral lineage going back to Aaron, the first high priest of Israel. These are not just religious volunteers, and these are men who can prove their biblical right to serve in the temple. They have been trained. They know the rituals. They have practiced with the instruments and vessels created by the Temple Institute. They are ready to begin their service the moment they are purified. And that purification can only come through the ashes of the red heifer. Now let me tell you something that even many religious leaders are not talking about publicly. Oh, there is a location already selected for the red heifer ceremony. It is on the Mount of Olives, directly across from the Temple Mount. From there, you can see the exact spot where the temple once stood, where it will stand again. According to tradition, this is where all previous red heifers were sacrificed, where the high priest would stand and look directly at the temple while performing the ceremony. Special platforms have been discussed. Security measures have been planned. And here is what should make every person. And here is what should make every person watching this pay attention. The same prophets who described the destruction of the first temple saw it happen. The same prophets who described the destruction of the second temple saw it happen. And those same prophetic books describe a third temple that has not yet been built. If they were right about the first two, what makes us think they are wrong about the third? Daniel wrote about it. Ezekiel wrote about it. Zechariah wrote about it. Jesus spoke about it. Paul wrote about it. John saw it in the book of Revelation, all of them describing events that require a physical temple in Jerusalem, events that cannot be symbolic or spiritual, events that require priests, altars, and sacrifices. And right now, for the first time in 2,000 years, all the pieces are falling into place. But I have not told you the most important part yet, the part that connects everything we have talked about to you personally. Because this story is not just about Israel. It is not just about prophecy. It is about what happens next, and what you need to know before it does. There is one detail about the red heifer that changes everything, and it is hidden in plain sight in the biblical text. According to Jewish tradition, there will only be 10 red heifers in all of human history. 9 have already been sacrificed. The 9th was used just before the second temple was destroyed. That means the next one, the 10th red heifer, will be the last. And Jewish scholars say the 10th red heifer will be prepared by the Messiah himself. Think about what that means. If one of these 5 heifers in Israel is sacrificed in the coming months, and if it is indeed the 10th red heifer, then according to Jewish tradition, but we are living in the generation that will see the Messiah. The same generation Jesus said would see all these things fulfilled. The same generation that would witness the fig tree bloom, which many believe was Israel becoming a nation in 1948. That generation is still alive, but not for much longer. And there is something happening right now that I cannot fully explain in this video. Something connected to a date that keeps appearing in rabbinic calculations, archaeological discoveries, and prophetic timelines. Multiple sources, completely independent of each other, are all pointing to the same window of time, a specific period when they believe the temple will not just be planned, but standing. I have been researching this for months, following leads that most people do not even know exist. And what I have found suggests that the red heifer is just the beginning of something much larger, something that was set in motion long before those animals arrived in Israel. The next few months are critical. If even one red heifer passes its final inspection, everything accelerates. The ceremony, the purification, the temple. And once that temple stands, the clock starts ticking toward an event that will affect every person on earth. The question is not if, the question is when, and the answer may be sooner than anyone expects.